Hey there, my name is John Callahan. I'm a product manager in customer experience engineering for Microsoft Intune, and welcome to Cloud Native with Microsoft Intune as part of Microsoft Technical Takeoff. Got a great group of folks here today. Start off with Christina. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you, John. So I'm Christina, product manager in the customer experience team, same as John and the rest of the team over here. So I will pass it over to Joe.
Thanks, Christina. Thanks, John. Joe Lurie, same customer experience engineering team. I think you're going to see that trend coming here when I introduce Jason.
Yeah, same team. Jason Sandys. Cloud Native is, I think, what all four of us have lived for multiple years here, helping get customers on board and aligned with our vision. We definitely acknowledge always sometimes that this is a little bit of a vision stance, but it is reality for so many customers. And we just want to help folks realize that reality. Awesome. So I think we had a quick slide here that we were going to show just to level set and to baseline. There we go. So basically, what is Cloud Native? So all four of us in general on this call are very Windows focused. So you'll generally hear us say Cloud Native Windows. But Windows isn't the only extent of Cloud Native. Cloud Native definitely extends to all the other platforms that Intune manages. And that Intune is concerned about. I'm not really sure there's any other significant platforms. I'm sure there's some niche platforms out there, but these are the ones that we definitely manage. And at the end of the day, this is what it's all about for us, right? And this is where we want customers to be in the long run, right? You may not be there today. That's okay. No one's saying that you did something bad, wrong, etc. But this is where we want everyone to focus on. And that's Entra, right? So Entra ID, we want your identity in the cloud and management. We want to manage your platforms with Intune. There are clearly some exceptions here, right? There are things that are never going to realize these things, but the vast majority of customers, we definitely feel we've engineered the right thing for, and that's where we want them to be. So really quick, I think from a Windows perspective, right, a couple of things here. We've said this a lot, hybrid join has been around for a long time. Again, hybrid's not bad. We don't want folks to just completely abandon hybrid today. We actually want you to adopt hybrid join today for your existing devices, right? Get them co-managed. Begin your journey to getting things on the cloud, and those two things help you do that. So we want that to happen. But the end goal here is ultimately to do exactly what the first slide called out, right? Be Entra joined and managed by Intune as far as Windows goes. Aspirations for some organizations, reality for others, hopefully a journey for everyone. John, you want to kick us off with the first question here?
Yeah, thanks for that intro, Jason, and overview of Cloud Native. And actually, I think our first question from the tech community is a really good one. One of the first things customers want to do as they move to Cloud Native is manage their policies. So the question that we've got is, what happens when there's a conflict? Say there's two conflicting settings. How should I deal with those? How should I plan with them? And is there any reporting or mechanisms within Intune to help customers deal with conflicts if they occur?
Yeah, so I can get started with this one. I think the main thing here is that we do point out when there are conflicts, but we know that there are some cases where we are not showing the source of conflict. And this is because some of the policies are, as you may have heard already, they are migrated to our new architecture of policies, and those will be shown in the source of conflict. However, if you are using templates or policies that were in the original templates, you will not see those in the source of conflict. But for now, you should be able to see those the source of policy conflict. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything else, but I think that's
what I am going to add, though, is you were talking about the templates, and because when you create policies, you have an option of settings catalog or templates, and those are the templates that you're referring to, right, Christina? I just want to. So yeah, so yep. So if you have those, if you have a conflict or two conflicting policies that are both settings catalog policies, I think we should see the source of the conflict in that case.
See the source, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great answer there. So let's move on to the next question from tech community. And this is another good one. Cloud native also kind of implies that even Windows devices are more mobile. And one of the things that we get asked a lot is, what about remote lock for Windows? Y'all have any insights on that?
Yeah, I'll take this one. This one's a bit of a loaded question. There's a lot of intent. There's a lot of different nuances that potentially go into something like this. The first answer here, and there are potentially multiple answers depending upon your explicit end goal here. But the first answer here is, really asking is more of a question. What's your motivation here? Why are you wanting this explicitly done? We can definitely opine. We can kind of theorize on why different organizations want this. But there's some definite challenges around implementing something to lock out a remote user. Basically, particularly in a cloud world, you don't have that instant connectivity to that device. So what are you really accomplishing? And if I'm an end user, I have different ways of potentially either circumventing what's going on with that, right? Just simply not connecting with Wi-Fi. Unlike, these wonderful mobile devices, they're not always connected. Our Windows devices aren't always connected. So you sending out a remote lock, assuming we had one, is a false sense of security to begin with. So we have to balance that challenge with also, well, what are you actually trying to do at that point? Are you literally trying to recover that device and use it again? Potentially, but there's lots of those caveats and lots of these questions that ultimately come up. So really the first answer here is, your best option here is, if a device, you don't have it physically in your possession, is you should be wiping that device. Send the wipe signal to that device, and that's your first line of defense here. The second line of defense is potentially making sure that everything's BitLocker, right? I guess in a way, those two things are together, right? If you're trying to prevent that device from being compromised, that's what BitLocker is all about, protecting that data at rest. Actually implementing something that would lock that user out so that you can recover the device, the question ultimately becomes, well, what are you going to do at that point in time? Are you trying to recover data off it? Are you trying to do forensics? Do you have legal holds? All of those different types of things, which honestly, at the end of the day, none of those hold water if that device was never physically in your possession. So could we see something potentially? Is it going to be a lot of work and some architectural changes and some coordination, collaboration with all of the hardware vendors? Yeah, but that's years and years out. There's nothing currently on the immediate drawing board. So lots of words there for me. At the end of the day, you're not going to see anything in the near future. We definitely want to hear explicit scenarios here, particularly where either remote wipe isn't the preferred solution, or where BitLocker doesn't fit in there in some form or fashion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing I'll add to that, Jason, is using compliance policies. One of the policies there is to configure locking the device after inactivity. That is something that most admins are probably already configuring, but it's something that you can do in Intune and also have auditing to make sure that that is actually occurring. Great answer. Let's move on to another one. This is actually a really good one for management of cloud native devices. And this is also coming from the tech community. And I think what's being asked here is, I've got these remote devices. They're no longer joined to the domain. That changes a lot of how admins interact and log into the devices, log in with like administrative accounts and get access to administrative permissions. How do most customers that go into cloud native deal with things like local admin rights and management of the administrator account and the passwords and everything that's associated with that? And I think kind of a key part of this question is, how do they do it at scale for all their devices?
I think one of the things that people assume right away, if I'm a cloud device and I'm a cloud account, I can no longer access my on-prem file shares. I can no longer log into my servers. And that's simply not the case. Most of the time, that's not the case. I'm sure there might be a niche use case where, yes, that is true, I can't log in. But the vast majority of our users that are cloud native and they are using cloud native devices, they can still access all of their on-premises servers. They can access their on-premises file shares. Hopefully those file shares have somehow made it into SharePoint or something like that. But let's say they haven't, right? So they can still access those. John, you also talked about like managing the administrator, maybe the administrator password. We actually just had a session maybe right before this one called Windows Lapse, which of course we've integrated into Intune, and Entra and Windows. It was a big collaborative effort. So Laps is a great solution for the administrator part. For the cloud native Windows, you should be able to access all of all the files, all the servers that you had permission to before moving to cloud. You should still have access to those.
Yeah, and I think this is a very common topic that we discuss with our customers when they are doing the transition from hybrid to cloud only. And I think everything that Joe said, just to add to that, I think we should mention also EPM, Endpoint Privilege Management, here for the management of the local admin permissions, because sometimes in this transition, we also have the opportunity to revisit with our customers whether those users really needed local admin rights on the device, or they just need it for a certain action. So we can be more granular and more specific without over granting permissions to that user. So those are things that we also work with our customers in this transition.
That's a good point, Christina. Thanks.
Yep. Another thing to mention here is remote help. That could be another great solution to be able to administer your devices remotely without actually having to physically go to the device or the user to be able to support them. And that may change some of the patterns that you have today and actually be able to enable you to manage these remotely better. And be sure to check out ak.ms/secure help desk support for more information. So actually, we kind of touched on the next question from the tech community live questions, but let's kind of go back to this a little bit, is because it's a very common question. I've got hybrid devices today, and those devices are joined on-prem. We're able to access file shares and printers and our internal apps, and there's a lot of concern a lot of times when customers move to cloud native. What changes when these devices are now joined to Intra and not joined to their on-premises domain? Can they still access the file shares? Are there caveats, things they need to know? Let's kind of touch on that a little more.
Yeah, I'll start off there. Joe touched on this clearly before. So there needs to be a big distinction first that needs to be made, and the distinction between a hybrid joined device and a hybrid user, right? They are two different things here, and they're not mutually exclusive in any form or fashion. So the reason that's significant is, in general, you're not using the device's identity to authenticate to things on-prem, to your file shares, to your on-prem SharePoint, to your on-prem web servers. In the vast majority of cases, the device's identity is completely irrelevant for that. So that's the thing that changes when you move from hybrid joined or just on-prem joined to Entra joined, is that device's identity. But that's not what's used, right? What's used is the user's identity. And so that's where a hybrid user is important, right? Because that hybrid user has both an identity in the cloud as well as in their on-prem AD. Through a little bit of magic in what used to be called AAD Connect, which is now called Entra Connect, those identities are linked. And Windows actually understands that those identities are linked and can send the proper one to that on-prem service. So that on-prem service sees the on-prem identity and works exactly like it always did, including SSO. So, right, if you've ever tried to authenticate to some on-prem service that required, authentication and SSO wasn't enabled, you'd get that pop-up box. Not the greatest user experience, especially if you get lots of them. But this is all SSO enabled as well. So the end users never actually prompted. This works with Windows Hello for Business as well, as long as you've properly gone through. There's a couple of little caveats within Windows Hello for Business, but it completely works with Windows Hello for Business. So the only time this really falls down, and these are extreme kind of niche use cases, use case not even the right word, niche scenarios, are if an application actually does use device identity. There are some out there, some even almost being an overstatement here. We don't see very many of these at all. There are certain organizations that have them for certain reasons. Those are generally something that you want to get away from for lots of different reasons to begin with. So that's there. So that device, or yeah, an application that uses device identity, or you've got your complete own unique authentication scheme. Clearly at that point, there's nothing, you probably had to authenticate separately to begin with on that. So that's nothing we can do about. But those are both opportunities for your organization to look at improving the overall end user experience to begin with. So in general, most organizations never have any challenges with this. It just works out of the box.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask a follow-up to that. That's basically going to be the same answer, but I want to make sure we said it. What if customers are implementing passwordless solutions like Windows Hello for Business or FIDO2 keys or some of the other solutions out there? Does that make this equation any different?
I mean, the only thing it really makes it is easier for the end user, right? I mean, Windows Hello for Business does that. If you've used Windows Hello for Business, or if you've actually been able to realize passwordless. One of the things a lot of us like to point out here at Microsoft is we don't even remember our passwords. I don't remember the last time I used a password. The last time I used a password, I know I had to go reset it because I had no idea what it was. Yeah, everyone's shaking their head because it's been so long. We don't do this.
Well, I remember my password because it's my mother's maiden name followed by the name of my first pet. So that's why I remember my password.
I don't think Joe's being serious.
And Defender for Identity just kicked in to save Joe.
Yeah, so that's the biggest thing is it makes life a lot easier for everyone involved, right? Including the end users, including your help desk, right? I mean, I know there's been Gartner studies on the number of help desk calls, so we don't have to go down the passwordless rabbit hole here. But it is an advance here for Enter Join is if you've ever tried to implement either Windows Hello for Business or passwordless with Hybrid Join, it's not quite achievable. It's got some friction. It's got some pain points. With Enter Join and all your devices are on Enter Join, it literally just works out of the box. There is nothing additional for you to configure except for some policies, right? There's always policies to control what's going on. But infrastructure, there's no hoops to jump through. There's nothing like that. It just works.
Yeah, and thanks for that answer. I wanted to make sure that was said because it's something that's going across everyone's desk lately is trying to get to a passwordless world. And just wanted to say it's not going to make your life that much harder to do this. In fact, it will probably in the long run make your life easier. So let's move to a question from LinkedIn, and we'll have some fun with this one. Proactive remediation scripts. It looks like in this case they're executing every 8 hours or after a service restart, but the script is configured to only run one time. Anyone want to take a stab at that one?
John, do you want to take a stab at that one?
I was going to say.
Yeah, so the joke is this is a feature I'm very intimately familiar with. So just to kind of handle this one quickly, that's not expected behavior. If you're seeing it, if you've configured it to run once and it keeps re-executing, we can talk a little bit about the components of proactive remediations, or we now just call them remediation scripts. There's two different packages or scripts involved. There's the detection script and there's the remediation script. The detection script looks for whatever the issue is that you're trying to solve, remediate, and then the remediation script solves the problem, fixes it. What I'm guessing is probably happening there is something happening in the detection script that's not quite exiting in the proper way. So my advice there would be look at your detection script and make sure it's following all of our recommendations for how to create and manage those scripts. If you're struggling with it, it's something that you can reach out to Microsoft support for. But I can tell you that's not what should be happening. If you configured it for once, as long as the script is actually exiting properly, it should only execute once.
I'm going to just add on because you said Microsoft support might be able to help, or Intune support. We've just added in 2502, we added live support right into the admin center, and maybe even Copilot support. But anyway, live support's in there. It's limited. Some tenants have it, some don't. It's still rolling out. But check that out. See if that helps you at all.
I didn't know that.
You didn't even know? Yeah.
No, that's a cool thing.
Part of 2502.
Oh, awesome.
For
sure. So another question from Tech Community. For those that have on-prem domain names that are the same as their M365 tenant domain, is it advisable to configure Cloud Kerberos Trust? And I know this has come up a lot with customers with like split DNS and overlaps in their DNS names. Is there anything y'all want to share on this?
I haven't heard of this one specifically. I don't see why this would be an explicit challenge, but I'm not deep in this one. Maybe one of Joe's.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't have the question also coming up to me either. So
yeah,
I think I'm very helpful.
I was hoping it was written on Jason's scaling when he was up like that. I hope.
Yeah. We might not be able to answer that one here. In most cases, you should enable a Cloud or Kerberos Trust, but we may have to follow up on that one a little. But thanks for the question. So we'll move on to the next one. Here's another good one. Filters. Filters are great. They enable a lot of targeting scenarios that that previously we couldn't do as easily with Intune. But things like platform scripts don't support filters. But then we have other areas like remediation scripts do. We have different things that do support it and some that don't. What do you tell customers when they see this and they need to be able to solve some of their targeting challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I still think that the advice and the guidance is to use filters wherever it is possible and whenever it is possible, because of the performance improvements that it brings. And I think this is very well documented, and we have talked at length in several sessions about it. So we acknowledge that we don't have filters right now in platform scripts, but it's in the backlog, and it's something that we want to add. But as a general guidance, don't get misled by this. If filters are an option, go for it. It's the guidance.
Yeah, I'm just to expand on that. What you said, it's on our backlog, but it is something we want to work on. So if if it's important to you, in the top of your Intune Admin Center, you see the send a smiley. That is actual feedback location that our feature PMs, they see that feedback. And you can also go to our feedback page, which is aka.ms/ Intune feedback, and fill in that feedback there with your use case, why you need it, on which part of the admin center you need it. Again, our PMs see that as well.
Yep, thanks for that. So let's go back to another question from the tech community. So we've got an intra-joined device that is using a VPN that looks like it's using a device cert for authentication. The question here is, would enabling something like device write back through intra-connect help here, or do you have kind of other suggestions of kind of solving the device identity challenge, which I think is partly what's being asked here?
Yeah, I was reading this one and thinking through it a little bit. I mean, I think it kind of depends upon the VPN solution being used here. At the end of the day, device writeback does not create a full device object in your on-prem AD. It is effectively a stub object. It's not exactly the same. So it really depends upon what that VPN pre-auth is actually looking for. And so it would be up to the vendor of that VPN solution, in defining if that stub object, and stub's not even the right term here. It's a completely different type of object, and I can't remember what it's called. Whether that VPN itself is okay with that object or not. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a VPN question. I hesitated on saying one thing. Not even sure why you'd want an intra-join device to reference your on-prem AD in any form or fashion. So, I mean, my better answer here is maybe you need to go get a different VPN solution. I mean, that's easier for me to say than it is to do, clearly. So, but I don't think any of this is behavior that Microsoft has defined or is up to us. So.
Yeah, something I would add here is kind of to what Jason was saying. If your provider, your VPN provider, supports things like conditional access, that may be a better way to prove that the device should automatically connect to the VPN, or you may be using something like a cloud proxy. That's another common way to kind of solve this this on-prem access challenge. Take a look at that. A lot of VPN and proxy vendors today support conditional access, and that allows you to take the dependency off of on-premises certificates for the device and actually move them into the device's identity that exists there. And the really big benefit is you get Intune compliance as a factor in that. And then you can say, yes, you can automatically connect to the on-premises environment if you're a compliant secure device, but if you're not, we're gonna prevent that tunnel from being spun up until you remediate whatever the problem is.
Yeah, good call out.
Yep. So thanks for that, Jason. Oh, here's a good one. Another one from the tech community. Troubleshooting Autopilot. This is one that many customers tend to have a lot of questions for. What would you recommend in supporting and troubleshooting Autopilot? And I know this is an area that we're investing in, so there's probably a little bit of futures here you can talk about as well on the roadmap.
Yeah, I think what is said here in the message as well is that the only thing I can do is to dive into the IME logs. It really depends on which moment of Autopilot you got the failure, right? If it's during app install or script install, that's the right place to look at. If it's in another phase of the Autopilot deployment, obviously you need to look at other logs. But at the end, it comes back to gathering the logs and doing the research on them. And there is something that we are improving, and I think is going to make a significant difference for Autopilot device preparation, which is including in the report the phase where the device provisioning failed. So at least it will give you a clue on exactly which phase you were at, and hopefully will help a lot in reducing the time for troubleshooting.
Yeah, I will add one thing here. It's maybe slightly tangential, but it's about reframing here as well. A lot of folks move into Autopilot and the cloud in general, thinking they're just going to carry their current or legacy processes with them, and they're just going to make them fit into a cloud world. That effectively mostly defeats the purpose of going to the cloud and going to Autopilot, right? These are not only opportunities, but it's almost a must for you to step back and rethink how you're doing things so that they align with doing things from the cloud and in the cloud way. And one of those core tenets is being simple or simplifying your processes. So we see a lot of people try to lift and shift their legacy task sequences and doing absolutely everything they did in their task sequences. And they try to do all of that during Autopilot. All of that complexity coming over, in the first place, it probably took you 10 years to get to that level of complexity in your task sequence. And now you're just trying to lift and shift it to something completely new and expecting it to just work right off the bat. Clearly, of course, the way I say it, right, it's clearly not going to happen that way. So definitely take a step back, simplify as much as possible, re-examine some of your base assumptions about what your user expectations and what your IT expectations are there. So that you can call out things that aren't explicitly needed. Shift to that user-centric, that user-driven model so that you can simplify those processes. I do think that the vast majority of errors we continue to see and get raised as support cases are applications trying to be deployed during Autopilot, or like extremely complex configurations, sets of configurations that, they have if then else type things that are in there, or, series of events. And those things themselves don't lend themselves well to Autopilot or the cloud in general, right? Being simple is the better path here. And so simplifying overall, I think I've said simple a bunch of times. Hopefully that got through. Maybe I don't know if I hit the 8 times yet or not, but
yeah, but that's the key, and that's one of the big driving factors behind cloud native. So as often as we can say simplify and simplification, like, yes, that should totally be the goal. And thanks for those points. And there was actually a session earlier this week on Autopilot and some of the best practices around there. So for those of you that are interested in this topic, be sure to check out ak.ms/autopilot best practices. There's a question in here that I think will be able to help a little bit, and this is also from the tech community.
I think we're at a short AMA. We have time for another question?
Well, I think this one I was just going to point out something,
okay,
and then we'll go out. So the question is, how do I know whether a setting in Windows applies to a specific version? If you're using Settings Catalog, there's a little bubble off to the side of every setting that will take you to the Windows docs that will tell you what setting it applies to. And that was my easy answer that Joe stole 10 seconds from me for. But yeah, I think we do this. Just make sure you click that bubble and go to it. And that probably takes us to the end of this. It was a quick session, but thanks all for all your great answers and feedback here. I thought it was a good session. So thanks, y'all.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.